For those of you that don't know me, I'm Captain Heather Knibbs. I'm with Aztec PD, but we're just going to go over what you guys need to report for being daycare providers and just citizens of New Mexico, what's required by law with child abuse and neglect. All right, so why this training matters to you guys. So you guys deal with these children on a daily basis. You understand their habits, you guys know their personalities, and you know when something changes with them. And then you guys also have a legal duty to protect. It's both civilly and criminally. So we're gonna go over all of that. And then you guys might be able to potentially save a life depending on if you guys report or not. So that's important. So there's a couple different frameworks we're going to look at. Legally wise, we're going to look at criminal statute, which is 32A-4-3, which is your duty to report. Applies to every person within the state of New Mexico that's over the age of 18, and it requires that you guys immediately report by state statute. And it's everyone. We'll go over it a little bit more. It's not just for professionals like law enforcement, doctors, all that kind of stuff. And then you guys also have a duty to report through your licensing. So when we receive a report from CYFD or directly from you guys or Sky, we also have to report directly to your licensing. So that's why it's important to kind of cross-report between all three entities. So again, we're going to go over the New Mexico State Statute of 32A-4-3. So it states that every person who has information not privileged as a matter of law, which is like attorney privilege, doctor privilege, HIPAA, that kind of thing, who knows or has reasonable suspicion that a child is being abused or neglected shall report the matter immediately. So every person, like I said, within the state of New Mexico is if you're over the age of 18, but it specifically includes in that statute if you work in child care, teachers, medical staff, law enforcement, that kind of stuff. And you need to be reporting to law enforcement, to CYFD, which is done through what's called SCI, which is statewide central intake, tribal authorities, if that applies, and any state licensing. And then again, the reporting must be immediate. You can't wait a couple days, talk to your supervisor, that kind of thing. It has to be immediate. So what must you report for the state statutes? You guys have to report physical abuse. So that's when somebody physically hurts a child's body. So if an adult causes injury to a child by hitting, shaking, or otherwise hurting them in any other way, you have to report that. Things that you might see is bruises that aren't consistent with normal child's play, any marks, especially if they're in the pattern of like hands or fingers or belts or something that you can identify. If the child flinches or if their behavior is just not normal for them, or if they're afraid to go home. Any kind of sexual abuse, so that's when someone's involved with a sexual abuse regarding a child. So when a child is touched, asked to do something, exposed to it, anything like that, it could be sexual abuse. So you might notice behavior that's not consistent with the child's age, or if they have trouble sitting, walking for an unspecified reason, if they have a sudden fear of one specific person or multiple specific people and it's a fast onset, or if they have a regression, so they go back into bedwetting, thumb sucking, all that kind of stuff, it might be a sign of abuse. Any kind of emotional abuse, so when someone hurts a child's feelings or self-worth, so if they're consistently put down, yelled at, threatened, or made to feel worthless, and it could be from family, friends, that kind of stuff within their home. So things you might see are them being told that they're bad, that nobody likes them, some extreme behavior, if they're extremely withdrawn or aggressive, some delays in emotional development, or if they have a lack of attachment to caregivers sometimes. So also neglect, so that's when a caretaker fails to care for the child's basic needs. So if they're not getting what they need to be safe and healthy, then that could be considered neglect. So things that you might see are dirty clothes, if they have a strong body odor, poor hygiene, if they're always hungry or asking for food, and if they're not getting medical care, if they're not getting proper education as well. So we're gonna go over what reasonable suspicion is. So you must report if you have knowledge or reasonable suspicion. So what reasonable suspicion is, it's a legal standard that's used to determine when a report of child abuse or neglect should be made. It does not require certainty or proof of the abuse is occurring, that a reasonable person with similar training and or experience would suspect abuse or neglect based on the information that's available to them at the time. So a mere gut feeling is insufficient unless it's supported by objective observations and consideration of personal biases. So there doesn't have to be an investigation on your part. That'll be handled by law enforcement and CYFD. If you're wondering if you should report, then just report anyways. When it's done through Sky, they have a screening tool, so you call down to statewide central intake in Albuquerque, they'll take your information, which can also be anonymous. They'll screen it through their supervisors, and if they deem that something needs to be done, they send it to law enforcement and they send it to a CYFD work. So we're double crossed. So again, you must report immediately, not after the shift, not the next day. It must be immediate so that we can get over there. We can make sure that child doesn't go home and go back into a dangerous situation. Reporting to your supervisor is not sufficient under law. You have to mandate state report to Sky, to law enforcement, and to the licensing board. So how to report that? You can contact your local law enforcement through dispatch or through 911 if it is an emergency. Statewide central intake, again, that's through CYFD. They can be made anonymously, and then good faith reports are always immune from liability. So with law enforcement investigations on my side, regardless the type of abuse or neglect you're reporting, when you call dispatch, we just ask that you guys have the children's name, the parents' information, date of birth, home address, phone numbers, all the demographic information that you can. That makes it a little bit easier for us. And if the child does tell you where the abuse is occurring, let us know. That just helps us establish jurisdiction so we can get an officer there to you quicker if it's us or if it's San Juan County. Document anything that they tell you, that you see. If you can take pictures without the kids kind of noticing. We just ask that you guys don't ask them direct questions like, who did this to you? Tell me what they did. That's bad, that kind of thing. Just document what they tell you and what you see, and then we can go from there, because we might have to do what's called a forensic interview, which is done with a light certified forensic interviewer in Farmington at their facility. So what a forensic interview is there a forensic interview that sits with them in kind of like a therapy type situation. They do rapport with the child. It's recorded. Law enforcement's there. CYFD is there. So we can actually use that in a court case so the child doesn't have to testify multiple times to what happened to them multiple times. We can use that in a court case. So it's easier when the child doesn't say, oh, well, my daycare teacher told me this, or my mom told me this. So to get the basic information of what they tell you, what you see, and then call law enforcement and call Sky. And then we just ask if you can wait to contact parents or guardians, just so that we have a chance to investigate and determine what we're going to do. Enforcement's the only entity right now that can take custody of a child. CYFD actually has to have us there to do it, or they have to have a court order. So we like to be able to determine what we're going to do without having to worry if parents going to come pick them up or not. So we just ask that you call us first. If it's kind of close to time that parents are supposed to pick them up, just call us and let us know. We'll try to get an officer over there as soon as possible. So what happens after you report? We'll respond and do our investigation. We'll determine what kind of abuse it is, what needs to handle on our part, if there's criminal offenses. If there's not, CYFD can also cover her part, because there's certain things that might not be criminal, but that CYFD can also substantiate on their end, such as verbal abuse, medical neglect, that kind of stuff, if it doesn't fall under the criminal realm. We'll also have medics respond if needed. And then, like I said, statewide central intake will review the report, cost report to law enforcement, but it'll go to the local law enforcement agency. So even if they screen out, it still comes to us, and we have a detective that will follow up on those cases as well, if it's not an immediate threat. So there are consequences for failing to report. There's a New Mexico Supreme Court case listed right there. It's a negligence per se. And so how does that apply to you? It just failure to report under that statute can automatically establish negligence in civil court. And that's both for the facility and for yourself. So even working with kiddie camp, if you don't report, you can be sued civilly individually as well as possible criminal charges in addition to that. So criminal liability, failure to report is a misdemeanor, which can be up to 364 days in jail and up to a $1,000 fine. Also, preventing someone else from reporting is also illegal. If you don't cooperate with CYFD, that's an offense as well. That's a misdemeanor. So that helps us with parents that aren't being cooperative. And then there's also civil liability for you guys. You guys can be personally sued for liability for damages, negligence, wrongful death, failure to protect a child because you had a duty and failed to act. So just be aware of those consequences. This is just what should I do if I report or suspect any abuse or neglect. If you say yes or you're unsure, do you have reasonable suspicion? So it just goes through this. If you do, my biggest takeaway from this is just, if you're not sure, report anyways. We'll come investigate, or CYFD will investigate. We'd rather you guys overdo it than not know, and we send a child home and something happens to them. So there is protection for you if you report. So like I said, good faith reporters are protected. So good faith is you're acting honestly and without malicious intent. You have reasonable suspicion that a child is being abused or neglected, and you're making the report because you believe it's in the best interest of the child to be protected. Cannot be punished for reporting, and identity is generally kept confidential, but not guaranteed. I know with CYFD, they'll sometimes put anonymous. They might have your phone number, but it'll say anonymous. We try to keep you guys confidential if you want to stay confidential. It just isn't guaranteed sometimes. And again, telling a supervisor does not protect you personally because it does not satisfy that legal duty under the New Mexico statute. So this just goes over it again, common mistakes. Well, I told my supervisor I wasn't sure if I should report it. I didn't want to be wrong. It's not my job. So all it requires is that you report reasonable suspicion. So this is just a few scenarios. Scenario 1, a child frequently arrives extremely hungry, eats excessively, and wears dirty diapers or clothes several days in a row. Do you need to report? So this one is yes. This may be neglect under the statute. Patterns matter. Repeated conditions creates your reasonable suspicion. You're not required to confirm parental intent or financial status, and a failure to report this could later be used as a negligence per se claim in civil court. So scenario 2, you suspect a child is being abused, but your supervisor tells you to just wait and see. What do? You still report it anyways. The law applies to you as an individual, not the facility. So under state licensing, it is also required that you report immediately to authorities. Internal policies cannot override state law. If you fail to report, you can be charged, not your director. So it's personally to you guys, the statute applies. Scenario 3, a child tells you, my mom's boyfriend hits me, but don't tell anybody. In this one, you're going to report immediately. So direct disclosure is an automatic report, and you cannot promise that child any secrecy. You don't have to tell the child you're reporting. Just call Sky, call law enforcement, state licensing, and we can go from there. Scenario 4, a 4-year-old is using sexually explicit words and has exhibited sexual behavior towards other children. What do you do? So on this one, report it immediately. That behavior is not age appropriate. So just look at what's age appropriate for that age. 4-year-old shouldn't know about masturbation, shouldn't know about touching other people's genitals, that kind of thing. So that might indicate that sexual abuse is being done on that child. We're not there to get him in trouble. We just want to make sure that that child is being safe. We want to find out where they're learning that behavior and make sure that they're not getting perpetrated on themselves. So scenario 5, a parent arrives to pick up their child. While signing them out, you can smell the odor of alcohol emitting from their breath as you speak with them. They're unsteady on their feet and they're slurring their words. What do you do? So we ask you to contact dispatch immediately to report. They're not safe to go with that parent because they appear to be intoxicated. So attempt to stall the parent as good as you can and delay them in leaving. If they do decide to leave, if you guys can just get us like direction of travel, vehicle information, where they might live, just as much information as you can provide us, and that way we can go at least check on the child. So scenario 6, a child comes in with a black eye. The parents state that the child fell off the couch, but there's been no prior concerns. What do you do, and do you report it? So this one might be a maybe. It might be talk to your supervisors and figure out what you guys want to do. Just look at consistency of the explanation. If the explanation doesn't match what the injury looks like, it probably isn't correct and they're just being coached to say that. Look at the child's behavior, and then again, look at the injury type. Is it consistent? Is there any kind of certain patterns that you're looking at? So just to go over it again, everyone's a mandated reporter. You guys need to report immediately, and reasonable suspicion is enough for you guys to make a report. So failure to report any of that is a crime, and you guys can be charged individually and civilly liable. And my email's up here, and my phone number. That's my cell phone, so if you guys need to text me or call me, feel free. If you guys have any questions that you don't feel comfortable asking out loud, you're more than welcome to email me or text me, and I can answer those because I know it's kind of intimidating.